A former casino CEO just revealed something that could cost the industry millions. And what he's saying about certain slot machines will completely change how you see casino floors. These aren't the machines casinos want you to avoid. These are the machines casinos themselves desperately wish they could remove. Machine number one, Lightning Link. This is the machine that broke the casino business model, and here's why executives lose sleep over it. When Aristocrat released Lightning Link in 2015, it became the most profitable slot machine in casino history, generating revenues that made every other game look obsolete. But according to former casino leadership, they created something they couldn't control. The hold and spin mechanic with those progressive jackpots seemed brilliant initially, but it did something unexpected. It created professional slot players. Internal reports from multiple casino operations describe a player named Marcus who actually quit his job in 2018. But he didn't quit to play slots casually. Documentation suggests Marcus now tracks Lightning Link progressive levels across 3 different casinos in his region, and former floor managers report seeing him systematically move between properties. He waits for other players to abandon machines when the progressives reach specific thresholds, then plays until he hits. The mathematics work in his favor at certain progressive levels, and he knows it. The machine has an RTP between 88 and 90%, according to insider data, which sounds reasonable. But the bonus frequency creates predictable patterns that educated players recognize. Former executives describe internal meetings where management discussed the problem they had created. One former CEO stated in a closed-door strategy session that they'd built a monster they couldn't control. The machine spawned an entire community of advantage players who understand exactly when Lightning Link becomes profitable. Casino surveillance teams report watching the same individuals day after day, and these aren't problem gamblers chasing losses. These are calculated players with spreadsheets and strategies. What makes casinos truly regret Lightning Link isn't that it's unprofitable, it still generates enormous revenue. The regret comes from creating a machine so engaging and so mathematically transparent that it educated an entire generation of players about progressive mechanics and optimal playing strategies. And if you think advantage players are problematic for casino operations, machine number two takes that exact same problem and amplifies it across the entire industry. Machine number two, Dragon Link. This is Lightning Link's sibling, and according to industry insiders, it represents an even bigger strategic mistake. Dragon Link uses the same hold and spin progressive mechanics that made Lightning Link successful, but here's what happened that casino executives deeply regret. Aristocrat licensed variations of this hold and spin mechanic to competitors, and suddenly the proprietary advantage they'd created became an industry standard. They lost market control of their own innovation. Documentation from 2019 includes an internal memo from a regional operations manager in Atlantic City describing what floor staff started calling the vulture problem. These are players who specifically target Dragon Link and Lightning Link machines, but only when progressives reach certain levels. They don't play randomly, they calculate. The grand jackpot trigger mechanics and progressive structures created something casinos never intended, a learnable system. Former slot directors report a player named Patricia who makes approximately $40,000 annually, and her entire income comes from what advantage players call vulturing Dragon and Lightning Link progressives. She doesn't work a traditional job anymore. She works casino floors with the precision of someone who understands exactly what she's doing. Casino management faces an impossible situation with these machines. Player demand makes removing them financially devastating, but keeping them enables systematic approaches that traditional slot mathematics never allowed. The machines generate revenue, but they also generate educated players who teach others. Former casino employees describe watching the same groups of people win consistently, and surveillance footage shows players using phones to track progressive levels across multiple machines simultaneously. What these machines did to the casino industry goes beyond simple profitability concerns. They created transparency in a business model that historically relied on mathematical opacity. And wait until you hear about machine number 3 because that one created problems so severe that one casino pulled it from the floor in under 48 hours. Machine number 3, Mega Meltdown. This is the machine that turned into IGT's worst nightmare, and here's the 48-hour story that explains why casino executives still discuss it in risk management meetings. When IGT released Mega Meltdown in 2016 as part of their progressive lineup, the machines rolled out to properties nationwide with standard installation procedures. But according to former operations leadership, within months they started receiving reports that something was catastrophically wrong with the progressive counter software. A Las Vegas casino in March 2017 experienced what internal documents describe as a code-level disaster. A player sat down at Mega Meltdown on a Saturday evening, and after approximately 40 minutes of play, the machine's progressive display showed a jackpot of $2.8 million. Security footage shows the player's reaction. Pure celebration. She called family members. She took photos. She contacted friends. According to the incident report, casino security arrived within minutes, and that's when management discovered the machine had malfunctioned. The actual progressive jackpot was $73,000. The display showing nearly $3 million was a software error. What followed represents every casino operator's nightmare scenario. The player had already told her employer she was quitting. She'd posted on social media. She'd made plans based on money she believed she'd won. Former legal counsel describes the lawsuit that followed as devastating, but the financial settlement was only part of the damage. The negative publicity, the regulatory investigation, and the complete destruction of player trust cost exponentially more. Internal documentation reveals the scope of the problem. The progressive counterbug in Mega Meltdown's base code affected 847 machines across different properties nationwide. Former technical staff report 23 separate malfunction incidents, where players saw jackpot displays that didn't match actual wins. Some discrepancies were relatively small, $50,000 versus $20,000. Others were catastrophic, millions displayed when the actual win was thousands. One former CEO stated in later testimony that the settlement cost exceeded everything the machine ever generated in revenue. But according to industry insiders, the real cost wasn't financial. It was the destruction of credibility. Players already suspect slot machines of being rigged, and Mega Meltdown gave them a documented case where the machines literally displayed false information. Gaming regulators launched investigations. Player advocacy groups cited Mega Meltdown as evidence of systemic problems. Most units were eventually replaced or retrofitted, but former casino managers described the reputation damage as permanent. At least Mega Meltdown's problems were technical errors. Machine number 4's problems were pure business strategy failure. And before we get to that one, I'd really appreciate it if you'd hit that subscribe button, because this next machine involves licensing agreements that cost casinos millions in fees for a game players actively avoided. Machine number 4, Game of Thrones. When Aristocrat secured the HBO licensing rights and released this premium-themed slot in 2015, casino operators initially celebrated landing such recognizable intellectual property. But according to former financial officers, the licensing fees created a profit structure that made the machines nearly impossible to justify. Internal budget documents show casinos paying substantial monthly fees per machine to HBO, regardless of whether those machines generated revenue. One former CFO described it as paying rent on equipment that couldn't cover its own costs. The mathematics created an impossible situation. To justify the licensing expenses, casinos had to set higher minimum denominations. Game of Thrones machines typically required $2.50 to $5 minimum bets, and former floor managers report that these high minimums created immediate player resistance. A casino operations director in Reno tracked performance data that told a devastating story. Game of Thrones machines showed occupancy rates of 34%, while non-licensed slots with identical mechanics maintained 67% occupancy. Players simply walked past the expensive licensed game to play cheaper alternatives. The replacement dilemma made everything worse. Long-term licensing contracts prevented early removal, so casinos watched their $15,000 Game of Thrones machines sit empty while players waited in line for 25-cent games. Former floor staff described the frustration of managing premium real estate that generated minimal revenue. Comparative analysis showed non-licensed themes with the same underlying game mechanics outperformed Game of Thrones by 40%, and every month casinos paid HBO regardless of that underperformance. This situation started the casino industry's skepticism toward licensed content that continues today. The lesson former executives took from Game of Thrones was brutal but clear. Machines must earn enough to justify both floor space and licensing fees, and recognize brands don't guarantee player engagement. Now, wait until you hear about machine number 5, because that one triggered a federal investigation. Machine number 5, Quick Hit Platinum. This is the machine that brought Nevada Gaming Control Board investigators into casino offices. And according to former compliance officers, the regulatory scrutiny alone cost more than any jackpot payout. When Bally Technologies released the Quick Hit Platinum series, it joined an already successful lineup of quick hit games, generating consistent revenue across multiple properties. But in March 2018, an anonymous complaint arrived at the Nevada Gaming Control Board from a casino employee in Henderson. And that complaint triggered an investigation that former executives describe as their worst operational nightmare. The allegation was specific and technical. The complaint stated that progressive jackpot triggers on Quick Hit Platinum appeared non-random, with clustering patterns that violated probability distribution expectations. Internal documents show the Gaming Control Board took the complaint seriously, assigning investigators who pulled performance data from multiple casinos simultaneously. What they found wasn't illegal, but according to former regulatory staff, it was statistically improbable enough to warrant extensive machine testing. The investigation documented that Quick Hit Platinum's grand jackpot hit 12 times across various Nevada properties in a 3-week period during January 2018, then didn't hit once for 11 consecutive months. Former technical analysts brought in during the investigation couldn't explain the clustering pattern. The machines were functioning correctly from a code perspective, but the distribution of jackpot triggers showed variations that probability mathematics suggested shouldn't occur with that severity. One former casino CEO admitted in closed testimony that they simply couldn't provide satisfactory answers for why the jackpot frequency showed such extreme clustering. The 6-month investigation created collateral damage that former operations directors describe as devastating. Player confidence in Quick Hit Platinum dropped immediately when news of the investigation became public. Revenue data shows a 28% decline in quick hit play during the investigation period, and former pit bosses report players specifically asking whether the machines were rigged. The Gaming Control Board eventually cleared the machines, finding no evidence of manipulation or fraud. But according to industry insiders, the damage was permanent. Former casino management describes regulatory investigations as uniquely destructive to slot machine viability. Even when machines are cleared of wrongdoing, the association with investigation destroys player trust. Quick Hit Platinum machines remain on casino floors today, but former revenue analysts report they never recovered their pre-investigation performance levels. Players remember the headlines about the investigation, and that memory affects their playing decisions years later. Machine number 6's problem wasn't regulators or investigations. According to former strategic planning directors, it was something worse. A self-inflicted business mistake that cost casinos millions, while teaching them an expensive lesson about product cannibalization. Machine number 6, Buffalo Diamond. When Aristocrat released Buffalo Diamond in 2020, casino operators initially ordered units expecting it would expand their already profitable Buffalo franchise. Buffalo and Buffalo Gold were generating consistent revenue, and adding a third variation seemed like logical brand extension. But according to former operations directors, Buffalo Diamond created what business analysts call cannibalization, and internal financial reports show it cost casinos substantially more than the $12,000 per unit purchase price. The problem emerged within months of installation. Buffalo Diamond didn't attract new players to the Buffalo brand. Instead, it split the existing Buffalo player base across more machines. Former revenue analysts describe watching total Buffalo franchise revenue remain essentially flat while being distributed across three machine types instead of two. A casino in Biloxi documented the effect precisely. They ran all three Buffalo variations simultaneously on their main floor, and player tracking data showed the same individuals rotating between versions rather than new players engaging with the brand. One regular player named Janet was quoted in internal feedback reports stating that despite superficial differences, it's fundamentally the same game with different graphics. Floor management data supported her assessment. Three Buffalo machines operating at 60% capacity generated less total revenue than one Buffalo machine at 90% capacity, but the three machines consumed 3 times the floor space. Former floor operations managers described the mathematics as obvious in retrospect. They'd paid $12,000 per unit to compete with their own successful games. The business mistake went beyond simple cannibalization. Every Buffalo Diamond installation replaced a different game that had been generating revenue. Former casino planners report that opportunity cost analysis showed they'd removed profitable variety to install redundant variations of existing content. The decision killed casino interest in Buffalo variants for over 2 years, and internal strategy documents show executives became deeply skeptical of franchise extensions after the Buffalo Diamond experience. Now wait until you hear about machine number 7, because that one involved actual physical violence. Machine number 7, Invaders from the Planet Moolah. This is the machine that casino security teams learned to monitor specifically, and according to former security directors, it generated more incident reports than any other slot machine in their properties. When WMS Gaming, later acquired by Scientific Games, released this alien-themed slot in 2013, the cascading reels mechanic seemed innovative and entertaining. But internal security documentation reveals something casino management never anticipated. The game's mechanics triggered unusual levels of player aggression. The cascading reels create a psychological problem that former gaming psychologists describe as amplified near-miss frustration. Traditional slot machines hide their near misses in background RNG calculations that players never see. Invaders from the Planet Moolah makes near misses visually explicit. Symbols cascade down, land in almost winning positions, then fail to complete the combination as players watch each step of the almost win develop and collapse. Former slot analysts report the game creates 4 to 5 times more visible near-miss scenarios per hour than traditional spinning reel games, and each visible near-miss compounds player frustration. Security incident reports from multiple properties between 2014 and 2016 document 34 separate cases of player aggression, specifically associated with invaders from the Planet Moolah. The most documented incident occurred at Harrah's Cherokee in North Carolina, where surveillance footage shows a player experiencing a 7-cascade sequence that came within one symbol of a significant bonus trigger, then failed. The player punched the machine screen with enough force to crack the display, requiring medical attention for a fractured hand and a machine replacement costing over $4,000. One former security director stated they received more calls for invaders from the Planet Moolah than any other single game model, and response protocols eventually included specific training about the machine's tendency to generate player frustration. The technical mechanics explain why the aggression occurred. Each cascade shows players exactly what they almost won, and the human brain processes visible near misses as more frustrating than hidden probability calculations. A woman in Reno experienced a similar cascade sequence, struck the machine in frustration, broke her hand, then sued the casino claiming the game's design was inherently aggravating. The lawsuit was dismissed, but former legal counsel describes the discovery process as revealing internal awareness that the cascade mechanic created heightened emotional responses. Casino management faced an unusual dilemma with invaders from the Planet Moolah. The machines generated solid revenue and maintained consistent player traffic, but they required additional security monitoring and generated repair costs that other games didn't. Former floor operations managers report they quietly removed many units despite profitability because the operational overhead exceeded the financial return. The machines worked exactly as designed, but what they were designed to do created problems casinos hadn't anticipated. Machine number 8 created problems so severe that it literally forced a casino to close its doors. And the financial mechanics behind that closure reveal exactly why certain slot machines represent existential risks that small casino operators simply cannot afford to take. Machine number 8, Megabucks. This is the machine that killed the Desert Inn, and according to former gaming attorneys, the story explains why numerous small casinos refuse to install wide area progressive slots, regardless of their popularity. IGT's Megabucks system has operated since 1986, creating massive jackpots that generate publicity and draw players. But the March 2000 Desert Inn incident taught the casino industry an expensive lesson about liquidity requirements and progressive jackpot liability. The Desert Inn was a smaller Las Vegas property with limited cash reserves compared to major strip casinos. When a cocktail waitress hit the Megabucks jackpot for $34.9 million, IGT's network paid the jackpot through their established progressive pool system. But according to former regulatory compliance officers, the jackpot win triggered mandatory cash reserve audits, and Nevada gaming regulations required casinos to maintain specific liquidity ratios, accounting for outstanding jackpot liabilities on their books. The Desert Inn couldn't meet those requirements with the Megabucks liability in their financial structure. Former gaming attorneys described the timeline as almost immediate cause and effect. The jackpot hit in March 2000, the reserve audit identified the liquidity problems, and the Desert Inn was sold by December 2000. Multiple factors contributed to the property's closure, but internal financial analysis identifies the Megabucks jackpot as what one former executive called the final straw that exposed underlying capital structure problems. Small casinos operate on tight margins, and a single mega progressive jackpot can reveal financial vulnerabilities that force operational changes or complete closure. The industry learned a specific lesson that changed progressive slot installation policies. Many smaller casino operators now refuse Megabucks installations specifically because the risk-reward mathematics only work for major properties with substantial cash reserves. A former casino owner in Laughlin explained in an industry conference that a $1 million machine generating $50,000 annually creates unacceptable exposure when reserve requirements can reach hundreds of thousands depending on progressive levels. We're down to the final 2 machines, and number 9's problem is happening right now across casino floors nationwide. Machine number 9, Cash Falls and Cash Eruption. These are the machines that represent what former casino executives describe as the industry's most expensive philosophical mistake. And according to internal development budgets, the failed experiment cost millions in research and development for technology that fundamentally contradicted everything slot machines were designed to do. When IGT released these skill-based slot variations between 2016 and 2017, they were responding to an industry obsession that dominated casino strategy meetings from 2015 through 2017. Every major casino operator and manufacturer believed they needed to attract millennials through skill-based gaming elements that gave players control rather than pure chance. The theory seemed reasonable in boardroom presentations. Younger demographics had grown up with video games, where skill determined outcomes and traditional slots offered nothing but button pressing and waiting. Cash Falls incorporated video game mechanics where player choices during bonus rounds actually affected results, and the mathematics were adjusted to account for optimal play. But according to former slot directors, what seemed innovative in concept became catastrophic in practice. Skilled players beat the games consistently, and the strategies spread online faster than casino management could respond. Documentation from Advantage Player forums describes a professional video gamer named Alex, who analyzed Cash Falls mechanics and posted optimal play patterns that reduced the house edge to 1.2%. Former surveillance directors report watching Alex's posted strategy get shared across gambling forums, YouTube channels, and social media within days. 3 major Las Vegas casinos pulled their Cash Falls machines within 6 months of installation, when tracking data showed that players following the published strategies were generating consistent wins that destroyed the game's profit model. One former slot operations director stated they'd essentially installed slot machines that educated players could systematically beat, which violated the fundamental purpose of slot machine design. The failure extended across the entire skill-based slot movement. Industry data shows fewer than 50 skill-based slot machines remain operational in Las Vegas today, down from over 400 units installed during the 2016 to 2017 peak. Former casino executives described the investment losses as extending beyond machine costs into research and development expenses, installation and training costs, and the opportunity cost of floor space devoted to games that generated minimal revenue. Casino operations had invested in a trend that fundamentally contradicted what makes slot machines profitable. The Advantage player community celebrated these machines specifically because they offered what traditional slots never provided: the ability to influence outcomes through skill. Former gaming regulators report some jurisdictions questioned whether skill-based slots even qualified as slot machines under existing gaming law, creating additional regulatory complications. The industry eventually returned to traditional RNG mechanics, with purely cosmetic innovation, and one former CEO admitted in an industry publication that they'd attempted to solve a problem that didn't actually exist. Players didn't want control over slot outcomes. They wanted entertainment and the possibility of random wins, which traditional slots already provided. And now for the final machine on this list, because machine number 10 represents something different from every other regret we've discussed. This one isn't about past mistakes. According to current casino executives, this machine's impact is about the future, and what it reveals about casino operations will change player relationships with slot machines permanently. Machine number 10. Pinball series and server-based slots. This represents the newest generation of slot technology from manufacturers including IGT, Aristocrat, and Light & Wonder. And according to current casino executives, these machines created a transparency problem that's fundamentally changing how players perceive casino operations. Server-based architecture rolled out across major properties, starting in 2021, and the technology seemed like the future of slot management. Centralized control meant casinos could update games instantly, manage floor performance in real time, and adjust configurations without sending technicians to individual machines. But former operations directors report that players figured out something casino management desperately wanted to keep hidden. The server-based capability allows real-time RTP adjustments, and documentation from player communities shows they discovered casinos were modifying return-to-player percentages based on time of day, player traffic patterns, and occupancy levels. A player in Pennsylvania tracked a specific pinball machine over 30 consecutive days, recording performance data across different time periods, and his published findings showed the machine's RTP decreased during Friday and Saturday peak hours, then increased during weekday afternoons when the casino was nearly empty. Reddit posts and YouTube videos exposed the dynamic adjustment capabilities, and the backlash from player communities was immediate and severe. Former casino executives described internal crisis meetings about how to respond to the exposure. One operations vice president stated they'd given players documented proof of what they'd always suspected: that casinos actively manipulate machines based on business conditions. The technology works exactly as designed, allowing sophisticated floor management that optimizes revenue, but making those capabilities visible to players destroyed the abstract concept of house edge that the industry had maintained for decades. Some jurisdictions launched regulatory investigations into whether dynamic RTP adjustment violated gaming laws requiring disclosed odds, and legal departments scrambled to determine if existing regulations even address server-based capabilities that didn't exist when the laws were written. The casino industry now faces a fundamental choice about transparency. The technology exists to manage slots with unprecedented precision, but using those capabilities risks player trust that took decades to establish. Several major casino operators quietly abandoned server-based systems and returned to standalone machines specifically to avoid the perception of real-time manipulation. Current strategy documents show executives comparing the situation to restaurants that adjust menu prices based on time of day. Technically legal, but creating customer relationships built on distrust rather than value. So, what do these 10 machines tell us about casino operations? Each represents a different type of regret spanning business strategy, technical failures, regulatory problems, and the fundamental tension between innovation and player trust. Lightning Link created advantage players who understood progressive mechanics. Dragon Link lost market control through licensing. Mega Meltdown destroyed credibility through software failures. Game of Thrones proved licensed content doesn't guarantee engagement. Quick Hit Platinum showed that regulatory investigation alone kills machine viability. Buffalo Diamond demonstrated expensive product cannibalization. Invaders from the planet Moolah revealed that game mechanics can trigger player aggression. Megabucks exposed the existential risks small casinos face with mega progressives. Cash falls proved players don't want skill-based slots. And a server-based technology gave players proof of dynamic manipulation. These aren't just stories about problematic machines. According to former industry leadership, they're lessons about innovation, regulation, player psychology, and the complex relationships between casinos and the people who play their games. This is exactly the kind of information discussed in closed-door strategy meetings, where casino executives analyze what went wrong and why. Hit that subscribe button for more insider analysis of how the casino industry actually operates. And drop a comment letting me know which machine on this list surprised you most.